Hello, 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 community. How are you doing today? I'm so thrilled to be with you all. My name is Jackie Boyd. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. I am the owner and founder of the Care Plan, where we provide care navigation services from an LGBTQ plus perspective, and we also provide care development services for organizations. So we are so excited to be with you tonight. It's one of our last installments of Getting Cozy with the Care Plan. We've got some new things coming this spring, but for this particular series, we are going to start to wind down here. I wanted to be sure that we had time together through those winter months during the times when, we're seeing our loved ones more. Many of us are dealing with either illness or isolation, mental health challenges. So, wanted to be sure that we had plenty of room to talk on a weekly basis. But I'm excited for what comes next, and I'll keep you posted. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Chrishon. Glad y'all are here. I hope that life is being kind to you, and welcome to the conversation on parenting our parents. And this, I think this conversation is really important, and it's language that I don't necessarily resonate with, but it's language that I know people use, which is why we, wanted to have a discussion about it. Because parenting our parents can feel like, in some ways, the reason why I'm not totally comfortable with that language is because I think it can feel kind of infantilizing to older adults. But the mechanics of what tends to happen as our parents age, that is, I think, what that language is trying to reflect, right? That at a certain point, if you have parents that you're close to, that you're going to show up for as they age, that your role changes, right? That you are bringing sometimes more assertiveness or solutions, having the hard conversations, holding them, caring for them in their process. So I know what parenting our parents is trying to get at, and it's that truth, right? That your role shifts as your parents age and need more support. So I'm very excited because right now we have a member of our team, and I hope, approved. You should be able to join. So hopefully you can say yes, and here you are. We did it.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. I'm getting better. Getting better.
How you doing today?
Good, and you?
I'm great. I'm great. It's so good to be with you, and especially for this conversation. I
Definitely.
wonder, would you mind sharing just a little bit about your history in healthcare and as a caregiver?
Oh, wow. I've been in healthcare, I want to say, for at least over 20 years. I did 10 years as a developmental therapist with the state's early intervention program, working with children birth to age 3, mostly with complex healthcare needs. And then I spent another 10 years working as a medical assistant for Rush and the Will County Community Health Center. And then I spent another 6 years working with the Illinois Department of Public Health, and then another 2 years working with the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities. And now I'm at the Wonderful Care Plan.
Yeah, and part of what I love about care navigation and the work we get to do is it integrates every element of who we are. And all
Definitely.
I know for me, all of those experiences, even back to being a CNA, I'm like, I use those skills every day, just in a
Definitely.
different way.
Yeah, you do. It kind of all comes together. You take a little this, a little that. It's like the best beef stew ever.
There was a couple weeks ago you said something that really stuck with me that I think is related to this topic. I forget what we were talking about, but you said, I wish that I had had some support like this
Oh,
when I was going through it. Do you mind
definitely.
do you mind sharing a little bit about like what you know now that you wish you could have used then?
Oh my goodness. I have learned so much. One of the things that always resonates with me is that the ability to ask for help, and that it was okay to need to rest, because it's such a stressful journey, and transitioning from being my mother's child to being my mother's caregiver was a huge switch for not just me, but for her as well. And she was very resistant because she felt like she was losing her independence and her ability to make decisions, which she doesn't realize she still made them. Despite the fact she didn't think so, she still made decisions and fought me tooth and nail on most things to the bitter end.
Yeah.
But just having a safe place to discuss my feelings, to share. I'm an only child, and so it was just me. I didn't have any siblings to debate with about care or anything like that. So it could, at one point it seemed to be less complicated, but it was so alone. It
Mm-hmm.
really was a very alone feeling. And I still remember when she passed away, being in that room with her alone, and I'm just sitting there. And they're like, okay, is it okay if we take? I'm like, no, I need a minute. No, I need a minute,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, this is it. And I was there alone, and it just felt, I don't know, it just felt lonely,
Mm-hmm.
lonely, and still not having no one to kind of sharing that experience as, being my sibling, as being our mother, and comforting each other, because nobody I felt would have understood it as much as I did being in that role.
Yeah.
But I wrote as in the care plan, I've learned, because I have a few clients that are alone, and we provide that comfort there. We're there, and I really wish I would have had a care navigator to help me along the way and to say, hey, it's okay, and you don't need me to do this for you. And I had friends, but it's really a huge gap.
Different.
Yeah, it really is. And I think about that still, and I still have not removed the sock from her room yet, because it is it's really a process.
Yeah.
So I've just learned to give myself some grace and just kind of take things as I'm able to process them.
That's all you can do. And I think it's remarkable the way that you showed up for your mom and other family members as the only child. Like, I think that's kind of a unique burden to
Mm-hmm.
be sort of the only person of your generation, not just the only child,
Oh,
but
God, yes. That and I saw that because my mother only had one sister, and she was in hospice before my mom went into hospice. And so, and my aunt's only son had passed away years before her. So
oh
I
wow.
had her too. And so, and I couldn't go to her and say, hey, mom is passing. And she said, because I kept that from her,
Hmm.
because I just knew it was going to take her right out the game. And it did. As soon as somebody else told her, she was like, okay, that's it. And I think my loneliest moment when I was doing my aunt's obituary, there was this picture of their parents, my grandfather's oldest sister, my aunt, my mom, my aunt's son, and me. And I, the only person alive in that picture.
Oh.
And I was like, oh God, my whole family is gone. That's how I
Hmm.
felt like. They're all gone.
Hmm.
And it still feels that way from time to time. And even though I have children and everything, but the family I grew up with are
Hmm.
gone.
Hmm.
The ones I spent, that we shared a home together, they're all gone. And so I'm having to find out who I am now in this space at this time. And
Yeah.
and the care plan has really helped me come into that and find out who I am and who I am now. And and the one great thing about working for you and for the care plan is that we're not we're not forced to put ourselves or leave ourselves at home and go to work, you know.
Yeah.
And that I think is really has not been my experience in the past. It's like, okay, you get your 3 days and that's it.
Hmm.
Come back and get back at it, and you're nowhere near recovered 3 days,
Mm.
3 months. It's been
No.
almost a year and a half, and I'm still not where I hope to get eventually. And this just may be the new me for all I know,
Yeah.
because it comes up.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, it's just indescribable. I was talking with my sister about this because she had a conversation with somebody over the weekend who had recently lost their mother, and I was like, it's a terrible club to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
It's the club you don't want to be a part of that each one of us will.
Yep.
It's like once you've been through it, you're willing to talk and listen to people and you understand it in a very different way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and Chrishon, I just think you're really remarkable because when you started with us, I didn't know that it had been that close of a timeline.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
way that you talked about things, I had no idea. It was like within the same year,
Mm-hmm.
you had gone from this really heavy duty caregiving and of course your intense job, and then you're caring for people with us just in a different way. And I think it's remarkable that you're able to hold that much, love and generosity for people and still find some kind of balance, right? You're not going to necessarily be healed from that grief and loss.
Yeah.
It's going to be with us, with you, with me for the rest of our lives. But like to even be as functional as as you have been all year, I think is remarkable because I know there's been times that I haven't felt functional. And for folks who are watching, I mean that whether like there were times when I was caregiving, when I was, parenting my parent, that I didn't feel functional. Like I was just like going through the
Uh,
motions and everything was for them and I was just like trying to hold
just hold
on
on.
by my knuckles to my
Oh
life.
yeah. Yeah. I was crazy, and trying to do that, deal with my aunt. I have still, I consider my sons young. They were both in their 20s. My oldest was in his late 20s with two children, one on the way, and my youngest son had just gotten married and moved to a new state. So I was here alone. So that in itself was like, oh my God. And I remember that my third grandson was born maybe a week and a half before my mom passed. And I'm trying to show her the picture.
Wow.
I don't even know if she realized it. I'm like, Mama, look, you got a new great grandson. Look. And she was like, I'm hoping she saw him. I don't remember. I really couldn't tell. I'm just hoping that she did. But I'm just like, oh my goodness. And I remember being at the hospital with one of my clients a couple of weeks ago
Hmm.
who doesn't have any family at all, and just being there to help comfort him and advocate for him gave me such
Yeah.
peace and joy, because I'm like, oh my God, because I'm an only kid, so I could very well end up in that situation. And I would hope that someone, because my sons are out of town. One is going to be out of the country, and you don't know what can happen. And I'm just like, oh my God, how, I can't imagine people who have nobody, you know,
Yeah.
nobody. That's such a lonesome feeling. And when you're caring for your parents, sometimes you feel like there's nobody,
Hmm.
even if there are a lot of people, because each person internalizes that differently, of having a sick parent, this person that was so strong and used to care for you and tell you what to do, and now they can't make any decisions.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
remember the day before my mom went in the hospital, and she fell in my office. She just collapsed, and I'm like, oh my God. I just kind of freaked out,
Yeah.
and trying to get her to the hospital. It was just a nightmare. And I was optimistic that this was gonna turn out okay. But you get that gut feeling, and I'm like, nope,
Yep.
I'm gonna know my gut. Nope, this is gonna be fine. But when she told me, because she knew it, she's like, nope, it's something wrong. I don't think I'm gonna make it. And I was like, what? That what is like you're shocked
Mm.
into the present, like your whole life instantly changes because you're down this road of no return. I, it's
Yeah.
it's 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 a It was just a horrible feeling. I'm shocked I made it home that night driving. I was just
Yes. Yeah.
in a fog, and I'm slamming on my brakes because I caught myself like kind of spacing out,
Mm-hmm.
like not paying attention. I'm on expressway, it's dark, and I would just, like slam on the brakes. I'm like, okay, Chrishon, you gotta get with it. You gotta be in the present, And that next day, I looked the whole train wreck, and I'm trying to handle business. I told her, I'm like, I'm sorry, this is just hard, and she was like, I can't believe it, because she's also the person who helped me put my aunt in hospice. So she was like, Chrishon, I can't believe that this is happening to you. And
Yeah.
I'm counting months. I'm like, wait a minute. If they told me I was going to be gone in 6 months, we were at month 5. And I was like, oh my God, it's month 5. And sure enough, she didn't make
Mm-hmm.
it to month 6. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what? I'm like, oh my goodness. So it's just a awkward place to be, and there's no rule of thumb.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
try to prepare yourself, and I tried, but I just couldn't let it enter my head. I couldn't process it. But
Mm-hmm.
then when it's there, it's like you're in this new space, like the world seems different for some reason. A big void, I guess, is the best I can explain it. Like you had something, like when you were a kid, you have this favorite toy, and I don't know if you've ever lost a favorite toy and you can't find it, and it's like your world is turned upside down because you can't find this favorite toy.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt, like, oh my God, I'm never going to see her again, at least here in the flesh. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe like all this time, and now it's just over. And you start thinking, did I imagine this? Did this happen for real? And I find myself still doing that. Like, I can't believe. And my mother was 75 when she passed, but I only had her for 50, almost 56 of those years. And some of them I don't remember because I was a baby. So that time
Right.
still feels short. And so you kind of feel like, wait a minute, this was too short of a time. And it's just like,
Never enough time. It's never
yeah,
enough time. I've worked with folks who lost their parents who were in their, over 100 years old, and it's the same feeling of loss.
yeah,
It's the same, like it make sense, you know.
yeah.
But Chrishon, I'd love to, just like say and offer honoring for your mom
Oh, thank
and for your elders because they obviously poured the best they had to give into you.
They
You're such a
did.
special, such a remarkable and loving person.
Thank
And I
you.
can tell that they were remarkable women
They
through who
were.
you are today.
They were. They were awesome. My mother's mom, my grandmother was just like the perfect angel. I always say that she had this direct connection to God.
Yeah.
If I needed something, I called her my dear, not my dear, but my dear, like my dear.
Hmm.
And I'd be like, oh, my dear, I need you to just pray for me. And she'd be like, okay. And I just knew it was going to be okay. Because I'm like, she
Hmm.
just going to call up God and tell him, look, my granddaughter needs this. And it was going to be done. And I remember when she was passing, just grieving, because I was like, who's going to pray for me now? Like, oh, my God, my prayer partner going, oh, my goodness. But I realized that all that time that I spent with her, and I think my grandmother started putting faith into me as soon as I came out the womb, because that's what I remember most about her. And I have picked up so much of that, and I can still hear her say certain things at certain times. Like,
Hmm.
Chris, baby, that'd be how she start off with that, Chris, baby.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, those words of wisdom, baby. You got a still tongue carries a wise head. All these ancient proverbs, and people be like, Chrishon, where did you get that? I be like, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Lord, we're willing and the creek don't rise. They're
Yep.
like,
Yep.
what? The creek don't rise. I'm like, okay, my grandmama, you don't understand.
Hmm. Yeah, we have a lot of countryisms, I call them, that
Yeah,
pop up every now and
definitely.
again. Well, let
Yes.
me ask you, because I feel like you have so much experience, and I really want to be sure that for folks who are watching,
Mhm.
we sort of are able to back it up to earlier stages of the experience and the
Mhm.
relationship. When I think a good question for us to discuss is like, how do you know when it's time for you to take more of a role, right? For you to take a more active role in your parents' life.
Oh goodness. So I have a couple of experiences because between my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, they were all very different women.
Mhm.
Now my mom, she was quite the fighter. She always took care of her health, would go to her appointments and things like that. But once I started seeing her kind of fall off and not be as persistent or as focused on that, and her medications were, I'm like, what, why is this still full? And have you made this appointment? She said, no, I don't feel like going. I'm like, what do you mean you feel like going? So I noticed that. And then just like I watched my mother a lot, and I would notice like little subtle things, like her memory started, she wasn't as sharp as she used to be. I noticed her stumbling a little bit more, not falling, but just her gait was off. um Her lack of interest and her ability to desire to eat, that was a huge one for me, because my mother could go like 2-3 days. I'm like, what, you haven't eaten anything? And she would take little small bites. I'm like, this isn't normal, because my mother was a
Mhm.
cooker. They all did. And so there were subtle things. They weren't big things. Like she wasn't passing out, none of the throwing up or things like that. But just the way that she would do things, and then her talk, like she talked more like this is it type talk, you
Mhm.
know, like not projecting things she's going to do in the future. Like, oh, Ma, let's do this. Well, I don't know if I'm be able to do that. And I'm like, why? But you like to travel. Well, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? But you really like doing that. Well, let's go to the show. No, I don't want to go to the show. Well, you love the show, and we would go out to dinner. And I remember we went to this one place, and we got my mom all her favorite things that she normally would eat, and she didn't eat anything. She didn't even like the coffee. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my god. I'm like, the coffee, because my mother drank coffee all day. They used to tease her so much. She had a pot of coffee,
Mhm.
and she would go through a whole pot each day. And she even stopped that. And I'm like, what do you mean this don't taste right? And then
Mhm.
my eyes would be like this, like, what? And so just little subtle behavior things. And then I started going with her to appointments, and they would ask things, and she would be saying, oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. I'm in the background. I'm doing this. She can't see me, but I'm shaking my head like, no, that's not true.
Mhm.
And then they're like, oh, okay, well, let's run this test. And then I started going to more and more things, and I could start seeing more and more decline because she wasn't telling me things.
Yeah.
She stopped divulging her appointments, and then she wasn't showing me her after visits summaries. And so I finally got into her my chart, and I'm like, what is going on? So you kind of have to be a little sneaky sometimes,
Mhm.
because they don't tell you. And it's because, one, her thing was, I don't want you to worry. I know it's just you're probably going to freak out. And yeah, there was times when she got some really bad news, like when the cancer had spread to her brain. Of course, being from the healthcare field, I'm putting two and two together,
Right.
you know, and I'm like, oh my God, and so now I'm vigilantly watching everything she does. And it's all, being in the healthcare field can be a blessing and a curse when you're caring for someone, because I remember seeing the CT scan she did of her brain, and I didn't know what it was at first, because I'm sitting, kind of cat a corner from where the image was. And she's like, what's that on the screen? I'm like, oh, it looks like the earth, and there's a bunch of water. And so I came around and sat down, and they had her name up there. And I'm like, I realized that was her brain. And that was the swelling of how bad
Oh.
it had gotten. And I was like, I was trying to hold myself up because I wanted to faint. And I'm like, oh, this is awful. Like, I knew
Mm-hmm.
then that it was really much worse than they had told me. And then the doctor was like, well, this is, this is a 50-50. And she may make it and she may not. But if she doesn't have it, she definitely won't make it. And I'm like, what? So it's one
Mm-hmm.
of those. So I didn't go in it confident at all. I'm trying to be, trying to,
Mm-hmm.
oh, no, it's going to be okay. And deep down inside, I'm going, oh my God, like, oh Lord.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was, that wasn't a good experience either when you start to see the telltale signs, you know.
I'm going to repeat some of those because I think that a lot of what you said as you were sharing your experience is like the signs that it's time to start. So
Mhm.
some of the things you shared were that if your loved one isn't handling their tasks and business the way they normally
Mhm.
do, like I think sometimes I see people sort of not want to look at that and say, oh, she's just having a rough week, or oh, she must be tired, but pay attention to those things. If the mail's piling up,
Yep.
if bills aren't getting paid, if they're in the same clothes that you saw them in last
Definitely.
time, like
Yes.
pay attention to all those things because it could be a sign that it's starting to slip or they're not able to do those things or that they need a little support to get those skills back,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes we have clients who are disoriented because they have a UTI, a urinary tract
Yeah.
infection, or their nutrition is out of whack and they're getting malnourished or dehydrated. It's always good to look at what is actually happening with your loved one, not to, take that sort of child role to say, oh, they'll take care of it or they'll figure it out or they're okay, they're in charge of their lives. It's a great time when you start to see that to start to insert yourself more, show up more, ask some of the harder questions. Because without sort of addressing it, one, you don't know what's really going on, and two, your person isn't going to get improved magically
Mhm.
without some intervention and support. So that's one thing that you shared.
Mhm.
The other is pay attention to changes. I think I'm just going to put this as changes in routine.
Yeah.
Like, are they sleeping the same hours? Are they talking the same way? Are they eating or drinking or going out as much? Are they doing the same activities they normally would? Because changes in that routine can really indicate something shifting.
Yeah. Huge. That's a huge one.
Mhm.
And when you said that, I thought about my mother because she had her own bedroom, and I have a recliner chair in my room, and she started sleeping in that chair. She would not leave my side, and that was very, like, very unlike her. And she literally slept in that chair for those, I want to say 2-3 months ish. It
Mhm.
might have been a little longer until she left here. She never
Yeah.
slept in her room again. From the day she moved into that chair, and she just kept saying, "I just think I just want to be in here." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"In here?" Like, and that was just not. She liked her privacy, and she gave that
Yeah.
up. She reverted back to like childlike behavior.
Mhm. The other thing I want to mention, because I think, some what's important to note is that people are living longer with more chronic illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, for the experience you've had, there are people that are caregiving for 25 years, where this change in role
Mm-hmm.
starts much earlier. And I want to be sure because you said that your mom really struggled with, you trying to support her in that way. Do you mind talking a little bit about that, about how I know she would say, I'm the mama,
She did.
like
I'm your
I'm your
mom.
mother.
Oh, I
How'd you
remember
deal
when
with that, with
oh
her,
my God. Well,
resistance?
well, it was really hard. I remember when I moved out here, and I'm like, okay, Ma, I'm moving out here so you can come and live with me. My mother didn't pack a sock. She did not pack nothing. I had started packing. I'm like, okay, Mom, here go the things. I'm gonna go home. Haven't been home in a week. just pack up and then we'll just move things slowly. She didn't do that. And
Mm-hmm.
so she was very resistant and angry, like really angry. And one of the things that I would strongly say is that if you are caregiving for someone, especially a parent, a loved one, husband, wife, whatever, partner, you absolutely positively need someone that can feed into you, that you can go to, because my experience has been that the closer the person is to you, sometimes they get very mean towards you and say some very hurtful things, which makes it already a tough situation just that much tougher. And it's really hard, especially for it to be my parent, for me to click that other brain on, and click my
Mm-hmm.
professional brain.
Yeah.
And she would always say, well, you're a healthcare professional. I'm like, yeah, but you're not my patient. You're my mother. Because she was like, well, if I was your patient, you would have told me to do blah blah blah. I said, yes, but it's different because you're dealing with a different set of emotions. So I'm able to empathize and comfort someone that hasn't raised me and I've been around my whole life than it is someone that I look to for guidance. And that piece of it was really hard. And I met a lady when I went to interview the hospice center, because I really didn't know anything about hospice. It wasn't what I thought it was. And I went in there and I just bust out and started crying. And she was like, oh, honey. I was like, oh my God. And I've got to put my aunt in hospice and I don't know. And, my mom's sick and has cancer and I just don't know what to do. And she was very patient and listened. So she gave me that safe space to kind of have my meltdown, because I hadn't had one, and it was
Yeah.
with a stranger in this strange place. And she didn't rush me. And she told me, go get some food, because I hadn't eaten. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And she was like, and come back. And then I'm going to take you on a tour and then we'll talk more. But you don't realize how much you're holding in until you're in this, and until you're in a place and that somebody just asks this one little question and that bubble just pops and
Yeah.
you just gushing of all these emotions. I was like, oh, I'm not holding myself together,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm used to that in healthcare, but it's a whole different set of emotions when
Yeah.
it is your loved one. And so, and just trying to hold it together and not become angry with them and frustrated. And it's so hard. That's
Yeah.
one of the other things, that I found to be hard, because sick people are not the lovingest people that they were. And even down to my grandmother, who was the prayer and the rock, became very agitated with her husband and the youngest sister, her youngest
Mm-hmm.
daughter. And I was like, but when I would come, she'd be fine with me. And I don't know if it was because I was pregnant at the time or what, but she kept her same mannerisms with me, but not with everyone else.
Yeah.
And so that's hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
That is, despite the
Yeah.
fact that they're ill or not, it just hurts you to your core, because you're doing your best and it doesn't feel like it's appreciated, and you can see them getting further and further away from the person that you knew.
Yes. Yes. And there's so many reasons for that. And I want to offer something for people, because there's a technique that can help with moving through that part. Because sometimes what I've noticed is that as the world becomes smaller
Mm.
for a person, right? Like you said, when you were isolated and you're the only person doing that care, it's like your world gets real
Yeah.
small because you don't have capacity. The same thing happens to like a senior or, someone with disabilities whose body is changing or who doesn't have the resources to have the access to the world that they've been a part of.
Yeah.
As your world gets smaller, you can lash out, and whatever the disappointments, the grief, the pain, like the real physical chronic pain that so many people are dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
that can cause people to lash out. And one
Yeah.
of the only technique that I found that worked with my mom, because, as a family, you have these long standing patterns and nobody's trying to bring their best self to their family, right? Like
Yep.
you put your smile on at work and you come home and you're like, oh, thank goodness, you kind of let
Yeah.
yourself be yourself and who you are in those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that there was two things that helped with my mom, and that I also had utilized with other people before. Having been a caregiver before, I utilized this with my mom too.
Mm-hmm.
I used humor
Oh
sometimes,
yeah.
like to lighten the mood or to say, you don't really mean that, and I love you in spite of,
Mm-hmm.
or to lighten the
Yeah.
mood and take it to a lighter place and sort of, not take it as in,
Mm-hmm.
because of course, if you've had a loving relationship with your parent, they love you, and that's what needs to stand the test of time, not the words that are coming out of their mouth when they're hurt or
Yeah.
sick or scared. So I would use humor sometimes, but the other one was when it got bad, when it got to the point where it was just like, listen, I can't listen to this negativity anymore. Like, there was two other strategies I would use. Sometimes I would, just like get actually into that child place and say, Mom, honestly, this hurts me. Like, I love you, and this hurts me when we talk this way. When you talk negatively this much, it just hurts. So I'm just going to ask that we can like change the subject or try it a different way, right? And that works if somebody doesn't have advanced memory loss. If somebody has like advanced memory loss, it's a different conversation. But
Yeah.
the other thing, so I'm sort of offering three things: humor, actually tapping into that child place and sort of asking for care. Like, can you be just a little nicer to me, or can you be a little bit nicer about this? This isn't easy for me either. Like, reminding them of that parental relationship, that can help tap into that mothering place or that parenting place.
Mm-hmm.
But the third thing that I did was when I got frustrated and felt my blood pressure rise, and I've talked about this here before, but I just had to lay it down and say, Mom, what are you really upset about? Like, I honestly want to know. Just lay it on me.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what is going on. And, it was the first time she really let out about her own sadness and grief and feelings of betrayal about her body and being sick for 20 years and not being able to be there for the grandkids and,
Yeah.
all of the things that were running through her mind that came out of her mouth as criticism or anxiety or stress
Mm-hmm.
or things aren't good enough.
Yeah.
Like, that's often what happens. And so from that point, it opened the door in our relationship to change our communication pattern, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah.
But those are for folks that are like, how do I change this dynamic? And, my parent is talking to me any kind of way or is resentful of me. Consider getting to that deeper place and talking about the real feelings, not the tasks that need to be done, but the feelings they're having.
Yeah.
See if they'll open up to you about it.
Yeah.
And then think about, being able to show up as the child when and where it's appropriate and remind them of how important that relationship is, but not being afraid to move into a leadership role with your parent. And third, keep laughing. Laugh as often as you can while you're caregiving. Like,
Mm-hmm.
laugh, joke, keep it light, sing, pray, anything that makes you feel that real connection.
Yeah.
That's the memories that you want to keep. Those are the memories that like make it, comfort you when
Mm-hmm.
you're grieving and sad.
And you're going to need those later. It's funny you said that because I have this echo shadow, whatever this thing is, and I took pictures and videos of my mother throughout things. Like, I know she was really upset when she lost her hair, um, and just the different changes that went on in her body. And so I took pictures, and I had bought her this. She kept saying that she wanted this onesie, this pajama onesie. Well, I got one that looked like a unicorn, and she put it on, and she made this like face like this. So I got a picture of her in it, and it popped up on my Echo the other day, and I was like, oh God, I remember that day, because she's like, what you buy me this awful thing for? I said, but you said you wanted it. I ain't want this one, but I thought it was cute. But she only put it on once, and so I have that, and I remember that, and there are other pictures we took. She didn't have on her wig, but she was, like, I'm still fine. So I have that, and videos of her dancing, because she used to think Will Smith was just the sexiest thing. They getting jiggy with it video. Oh Lord, she was like, "Oh, I didn't know he was that fine." I'm like, "Really, Ma?" And she would play it over and over and over again. And I'm like, Mama, she said, "Oh, I can get jiggy with him when I want to." And I'm like, Mom, I think your jiggy days are over. Just kind of calm down. And so there were those moments that despite the fact that it was tough, we still found those moments to laugh. And if you can catch them on video, record, like keep something that when you're in a better place, that you can play those back, and then that time won't seem as dark and as sad. I mean, you'll still miss them, but you'll be like, boy, I said, what, Mama, she used to fuss about she didn't want this food, and it was awful. She was like, you don't put no seasoning in your food. I'm like, well, you can't have some. Well, I don't want it then. So I remember those moments, and now, like now they're funny, but then I'm like, Mama, look, it's 7:00. You got to take this medicine. You got to eat. Well, I don't want it. And I'll be like, Lord, help me, like, oh my goodness. So then at one point I just like, look, what do you want? Because I don't care if you want a box of salt here, just put salt in it, because at some point you just gotta give in. But now it's kind of funny, because she acted like a kid. And this one day I came in from work, she was like, Mommy, I want to go out, I want to go play. Remember I used to do me? I'm like, I was never like that. She's like, yes, you was. So now I'm getting back at you. So I want to go out. And she was stomping her feet. I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. Well, then you on punishment, because that's what you did to me. So now you ain't going nowhere. And so I took her out this one time. We were at Ross. She loved Ross, and she got to buy some stuff. I said, see, Mama. Yeah. I said,
Who doesn't love Ross?
I said, my mom was a good girl this week. She took all her medicine, so she gets to go on an outing. So the lady was like, oh, that's so sweet. She's like, I want that, and that over there too. so you still have those moments that you can create these memories where you'll be able to sit back and even laugh at some of the tough times eventually. Because you'll be like, I can't believe my mama was acting like that now. I think about it. I'm like, oh, she's being such a brat, and she was. See, I think she took advantage though, and was just doing extra, because they can. She's like, well, if I'm gonna,
and you were going to deal with it regardless.
Yeah, so
you were going to deal with it regardless.
Yeah. So I was like, oh boy. So and those are those subtle changes though, when you start to seeing that role shift, and they're real subtle, but they'll start asking you to do things that they usually do on their own, and they wouldn't ask for your help, and they're real subtle, like, she's like, well, I thought we was going to go out. And I'm like, here, you ain't never asked, hung out with me. You hung out with your friends, and me wanting to hang out with her and her friends more, and I was like, she ain't never asked me to do this, And so, but I would go, but those are all those things that kind of are leading up to it. And they always say that people know, when they're getting to that stage. And from my experience, I truly believe that to be true. And so just finding balance to be able to still stay in a safe.
Oh, yeah. You're reminding me, right, as we're about to close this out, but I so appreciate everything that you've shared and especially these positive memories of, how things were with your mom and how close you two were. And even though that changed over time, that closeness was able to remain.
Yeah.
Um, it's reminding me of something I just want to open people's eyes and minds to. If you've never done the physical side of caregiving, like if you've never given a shower or washed someone's hair or helped them brush their
Oh,
teeth
yeah.
or change their clothing, if you've never done that and you think you might be comfortable or have a propensity to show up for your loved one in that way, I encourage you to try. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. You can reach out to us for tips. There's places you can learn about how to, do personal care. But what I find and have always found so valuable in the caregiving relationship is that those times of when they need comfort, at a
Hmm.
certain point, especially towards end of life, like comfort is not always conversation and it's not
That's true.
activities. At a
That's very
certain
true.
point, people are not going to want to sit through, a game. Like they can't play a game with you or they don't want to have some long conversation. They might just want you to brush their hair or help them feel clean and refreshed or do their nails. And so I think there's like a million small ways that you can still have that feeling of that parenting relationship, and that piece, does reverse, but there's so much sweetness in it. I've had that with clients, and then of course had that with my mom, where it was like one of my favorite memories is getting her ready for our Christmas celebrations, and it was the first time she had gotten dressed in like 2 months, and we had gotten all washed up and all cleaned up and done her hair, and she just had the biggest smile, and she did her makeup, and I was there with her every step of the way. And it was like, it was that way that, people need comfort
Hmm.
and to feel like themselves. And
Yeah,
you as the child sometimes are the only person that still knows who they were, right?
that's
And can be
true.
like, I'm gonna do your hair, mom, just the way you like it. I'm gonna do
Yeah,
your
that's
makeup,
true.
mom, just the way you like it. I'm gonna put your favorite outfit on you.
Oh,
You might be
yes.
the only person that holds that. So I just want to encourage people, because those are like the small things that I think sometimes folks are intimidated to try,
Hmm.
to be like, oh, I don't want to shower my mom, or I don't want to help my dad,
Hmm.
with shaving. Like, just
Yeah, it is a
if you have
difference.
it all the instinct, just try it, because
Yeah,
you
it is a
don't know
difference.
what'll happen.
Yeah, especially when it's a male and it's a daughter or a
Mhm.
female, because my husband is going through that. And I remember when he first had to take care of his mom and change a diaper, and he was calling me and he was just like, oh my God, oh my, because he hasn't seen
Yeah.
her that way before. He's
Yeah.
never seen her without her clothes on. And I'm sure she was horrified, but I think he was more like, this is my mom, like, especially
Hmm.
culturally, that was just a no-no. And
Yep.
so trying to walk him through getting comfortable with that, and to the point now where she's like okay with it, and she trusts him. And he just kind of, we call her our baby girl. I said
Hmm.
she's our baby girl, to make him more at ease. I said, so just think of it that way, and that worked. And he says, the baby girl was just crying and crying today because I had to leave. And so I said, well, let me talk to her. I said, Mom, he had to go out and get you the stuff you like, because you want your meat and you want this. She was like, yeah. So, well, he got to go out and get it for you. Remember, he brought it back for you. She said, yeah, he did. But they it's good to find what weapons you have available. So my husband's like, whenever she cry, I just call you, because she gonna stop and start smiling. And for my mom, she used to sing, the middle grandson, her great grandson was like her baby, and she used to sing this song, Jackie. Oh my God, she would be like, Gigi, little baby, cute as he can be. And she would sing it for 5 minutes while he would be on the phone, and I'd be like, oh Lord. But that would but that would get her out of her funk, So
Mm-hmm.
you have to find those things that they like. Or she likes stir fry, so I would make
Mm-hmm.
stir fry for her, and that's the one thing that I could get her to eat. We got tired of stir fry. Was along. I didn't make none until this past week. I had made none since because we ate it so much, because that's the one thing that she would eat. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to find those things that they gravitate to, and even if they're not supposed to have them, it's really not going to do too much harm at that stage. So if she
Yeah.
wanted cheesecake, I went and bought cheesecake. If she wanted ice cream, I bought ice cream. So it's just like with a kid. You give them they treat, they happy, they calm down, they start crying. And that's kind of the mindset that you have to be like, what is it that I can give my baby, because they become your baby, to comfort them. And you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
With a baby, when they up crying at night, you don't care what it is. If you got it, you gonna give it to them. Be like, here, you want this chocolate, this brownie? Here you go. Because you need that. You need the rest, and they need to stop crying. So
Yeah. And I think you have such a big heart. I know that my style is a little bit like I try to build a routine and try to like I think I might be a little less indulgent because I'm like, I want to sleep tomorrow too, and I
right.
want you to not have this blood sugar rise. But it's all in moderation, right? And
Yeah.
it just depends. But I think it's so important to remember the role of comfort. That like what your parents need
Mm-hmm.
is always going to be comfort, and not what's comforting to you, but
Yeah.
what's comfort for them in
Mm-hmm.
that moment,
Yeah.
right? Say that you have someone who is starting to have memory loss and is coming to terms with it and keeps being in denial or like, no, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to talk about it. Comfort is not saying, Dad, we need to go to the neurologist, and Dad, we need to do this, that, and the other, and Dad, you got to get a caregiver. And it's too overwhelming. Being with that person in the moment is
Mm-hmm.
probably listening, sharing space quietly, doing activities that help them feel like themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, maybe the time for these other interventions or these other things. So,
Mm-hmm.
everybody, I want to say thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Thank you, Chrishon, for sharing all of your insights and
Oh,
your joy with us. It's so good to be with you.
thank you. It was nice to be here, and it's nice to be able to share, because this is therapy for me, to be able to talk about my experience and hope that it will reach someone else and they'll find some comfort and be like, yep, she did like that. Let me go do this. And my mom loved earrings, and Jackie, I bought earrings. She got tons of them. I'm like, oh, here, mom, here goes some earrings. Then she started getting mine. I'm like, who bought you those? It got so bad, Jackie. One time I bought her some earrings. She said she didn't want them. So I put them in my jewelry box, and then she go and get them. Where these come from? I said, these are ones you
No.
said you didn't want. Well, I changed my mind. I'm like, oh, okay.
I bet you did.
So, so
And that's
it's
her prerogative.
right. So it's those moments, and you'll find them. You'll find them.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, everybody, we just want to encourage you. Remember that your best is good enough. And if you have questions, just give us a call. Reach out. You can talk to me or Chrishon about what's going on with your loved ones, and we're happy to help.
Yes,
So
we are.
don't be a stranger and don't go through it alone. Everybody, take good care, and we'll see you soon.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Chrishon.
Thank you.